Before we get started, let me just ask you if you've got a cell phone, please silence it or turn it off. So do we have a motion to call the meeting to order? Sir?
Seconded.
Thanks for the second. Any discussion? And all those in favor say aye. Good. Okay, our meeting is open, and the first order of business is pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have distributed an agenda, and are there any proposed amendments to that agenda?
No.
No,
Okay, if not, I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
I second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. No one's opposed, and we have no stepping out. First order of business this morning is I'd like to welcome Bill Vornum, who is a new member to the Board of Adjustment, and I'd like to publicly thank John Surgow for his service to our town. We have minutes from our February 8th, 2023 meeting. There are a couple of minor typographical changes that have been made, but is there a motion to accept those minutes?
I move to accept the minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you for that second. Any discussion or other changes?
Nope.
Okay, thanks. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. No one's opposed and no one has stepped out. Okay. The old business that we're here to discuss this morning has to do with variance request 2022-01, a lot on West Canal Street. Before we get into the facts of it, I'd like to ask all the members, do you have any conflict or anything that would appear to be a conflict that would stand in the way of your rendering a fair decision?
No.
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 No. And I'm also no. So we can proceed forward. Mr. Laughlin has submitted additional information from the prior meeting that we had, and has asked us to get together this morning based on that and to reconsider the variance that he is seeking. Chad, why don't I open the floor to you?
Sure. If I could get Katie to swear everybody in. Get Katie to swear everybody in that's going to speak this morning.
Okay.
So if you are going to speak or think you might speak in front of the testimony, if you'll come forward and put your hand on the Bible so Katie can swear us in. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Laughlin, owner and applicant, is requesting the approval of a variance of a required 50-foot front yard setback of 76.06B, which is, just want to be clear, that is the old UDO of which he submitted an application under. That is the one we were still operating on as of right now. So section 6.606B requires a minimum distance of 50 feet from the front property line to a principal structure. Just to let you know, that is not changed into the new UDO. It's still the same regulations. The applicant and owner is requesting the variance of the Town of Sunset Beach Unified Development Ordinance. The applicant, let's see, on December 7th, which was the last time we met on this case, the Board of Adjustment made the decision to table this hearing indefinitely, requesting additional information from the applicant. The following information was requested from the applicant: a site plan and a home survey, which you have, a footprint property to establish 1,000 square feet with an objection to minimize the setback variance, documentation of the changes of when camera rules were changed in 2016 and how it change the building footprint, and details on how a change in the deed restrictions can be accomplished. I want to point out a few things here. That 1,000 square foot was never a deed restriction. It was information given by a former planning director. At the time, the UDO required that you have a minimum 1,000 square foot residence. However, in the past couple of years, legislators deemed that planning and zoning unified development ordinance cannot justify a minimum building footprint or building square footage, a minimum building square footage. So we could not impose that on him anymore. It might have been in place, or it might have been wrong information given by a former planning director. But now, as of now, we cannot impose a minimum building square footage. However, the building code can, and they do, but that is not in the purview of the UDO. So, for example, when you build a house, you have to have a minimum square footage of a living room, a living area, which also can be the same area that you sleep in, and a minimum square footage of a kitchen and a full-size bathroom.
That's in the UDO.
That is not in the UDO. That is in the
Right.
building code.
So to build on this property, you would have to meet the building code.
That is correct, which you would have to do anywhere else in Sunset Beach or anywhere in North Carolina to meet the minimum building code. So I want to point out a couple things. You have two site plans in front of you. You have one where it meets the 50-foot setback, and I think Mr. Laughlin, and he can touch on this a little bit more, but I think this is a minimum of 575 square feet. And then the second one, so this is the one that is meeting all the setbacks.
Right.
All right. And then he has proposed one that has shifted the house up and to the left out of with his variance request at 25 feet. One thing I want to point out is that there is a CAMA buffer in there. I want to make sure that we cannot grant a variance on a CAMA buffer. So what you're seeing proposed is that from reducing the proposed 50 feet to 25, he's moved it out of the CAMA buffer and meeting the 25-foot requested setback instead of the 50-foot front yard setback. So
Chad, let me make sure that I haven't misunderstood you. The 575 square foot site plan
Mhm.
does or does not impinge on the CAMA setback?
From the survey that is looked, if we would enforce him on the 50-foot required front yard variance as it sits now, it would become a factor. That 30-foot CAMA buffer would become a factor. The mean high water line was recently flagged within the last year, so it is pretty dang on close. His surveyors put that on a survey, so that makes it pretty dang well accurate. Looking at the survey. Again, we wanted to just make sure we can, you have the floor to, remember the variance has to meet the 4 criteria.
Right.
But there is the CAMA that will come into play of this, where it will eat up much of that house. However, this board does not have the authority to grant a variance off of those CAMA rules. Only CAMA is that, and that's where Katie would come into play on CAMA permits, major and minor, working with DCM and CAMA to make sure those permits are put through the right channel, and I'm sure get the owner applicant, if needed, in front of the right people if they were to pursue a variance from CAMA. So,
Okay. May I just ask one other question?
sure.
We have been provided with a deed restriction that appears to show in section 4
Okay.
a minimum building requirement of 1,000 square feet.
All right. So let me rephrase my statement. Make sure I'm under oath here. If there is a deed restriction of 1,000 square feet that can be imposed, my apologies for that. However, the town cannot impose that 1,000.
Understood.
All right. So if 1,000 was given to them on a deed restriction or just on the UDO, that's no longer there. However, if there is a deed restriction there, then that is kind of is what it is.
And under those circumstances, we might assume that adjacent or nearby property owners that were party to this could bring suit and halt construction.
Sure. Now, the other thing you got to think about is a minimum of 1,000 square feet is not necessarily a 1,000 square foot footprint. You can take 500 square feet, build on top of it, because you have a max height of 35 feet. He is in a flood zone.
That's not the way I read it.
Right. I believe this says on the ground floor.
Okay. All right. And I mean, at that point, I'll turn it over. That would be questions Mr.
Okay.
Laughlin could answer, but I cannot go really into that.
Chad, I have one question.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Does I notice it's 575
75.
feet. Does
Mhm.
that meet the minimum building code? I mean, with the living room, is that in the ballpark of that?
I think it's in the ballpark.
Do you have those, perchance, the building requirements, do you have those?
Sorry. You've seen this, right?
Yes. Precisely? Or?
I do not.
Okay.
And
No,
that
that's
would
what
be, and you would need to defer to the chief building inspector
Yeah.
on that.
I understand.
Chad, any other comments?
That's it for me. I can answer any questions y'all might have now or later.
I think actually it would be helpful at this point for us to hear from Mr. Laughlin.
Okay.
Chad, did you speak with Kama about this? I thought we had talked with Kama,
I have not.
or had Kama not have a problem with it?
So Kama went out there and flagged your lot.
Right.
You would have to formally seek a variance from Kama just like you're going through us.
I see.
Yeah, Katie's your LPO.
Okay.
But ultimately, we did talk about the Kama variance. Your site plan, your newly one that we
Right.
met with your surveyor on,
Right.
brings that house out of the Kama buffer. So you're proposing the structure on the 50% reduced front setback.
Mm-hmm.
And that would allow you to meet the side setbacks that are in place right now, but would bring you out of the Kama. However, you've kind of chosen to do that, but if the variance was denied today, and the house would sit where it is, you would then have to seek the variance from Kama directly.
I understand.
Okay.
But if we were allowed the variance, the 25 foot, we would be in compliance with Kama.
From the surveyor, you would have you were allowed 200 square foot of open decking in a Kama setback. So the 30-foot Kama buffer, you would be allowed, and I told you this, a 2,200 square foot open deck.
Right. That's correct.
In that, you do have a corner of that house that would still be in that 30-foot Kama buffer, without knowing your full house design and details down to the exact precise. We wouldn't know how we're looking at 50 square feet. We're looking at up to 200 square feet.
I understand.
So,
I understand.
Okay.
Okay, I certainly understand that, and thank you. Of course, the property's beautiful, and I want the property to be buildable and usable. It's on the water. It's on the deep water. I've got great neighbors. I've had a letter from my neighbor that said that he and she would, of course, approve what we're trying to do. My goal is 575 square feet. If that were allowed to me, I don't think that would be good for the neighborhood. I think 1,000 square foot footprint would be much better for the neighborhood, for the value, because the homes in there are anywhere from probably 1,500 to 3,000 square feet. And so if I had 1,000 square feet and I could go up, you've got a 2,000 square foot structure, which is all the value stays in the neighborhood. The 25 feet If it were on a busy road or throughway, I could, but it's not. It's very seldom traveled. Only people that travel it are residents, mailmen, delivery people. They don't even allow boats down the road. There's a sign, no boating to go to do the cut through. So that's what I'm asking. And I think it would be for the betterment of the neighborhood to allow this.
Questions? Bill?
Yeah. In that deed that I read, where there was restriction for 1,000 square feet,
Yes, sir.
it also says there's a process that you could apply to have that removed. If you would get, and I guess if you go to all of the other owners under that particular lot, combination of lots. Have you tried that?
No, because I would want more than a 575 foot footprint.
No. I thought it was 1,000 square foot limitation is in the deed. And there's a process also stated within the deed of how to get that removed or eliminated or changed, whatever the number is.
Okay.
And I see what you're saying is you don't want to go below 1,000.
Correct. And I mean, it could be if if it were allowed. And I was told by a former employee that we had to have 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And so, of course, that's where I pursued it. And I thought, well, that's no problem because I wouldn't want to put a house that's not as valuable.
But you could put a house that kind of overhangs second floor to first. Is that?
I don't think so. I don't know because of the roof. I think the impervious,
Yeah, I understand
if you have
that.
a roof structure,
Yeah.
it has to be a deck. That's my understanding. Because although you have this and a roof, the roof is
But-
where we have to count the non-impervious.
I understand impervious coverage, but I was thinking about whether or not that's building department code required, it's zoning required, or it's deed required.
For the impervious?
Well, no, it's just a thought that if you needed 1,000 square foot on the first floor, and you went and got a variance from the deed
Mhm.
for that purpose to reduce that to something else, can you have a second floor that's more than that square footage? And I don't know whether there's an issue with the building department saying you can't, or even the CAMA rules, for instance. I mean, you're not in there, you don't build in their space, but you do overhang it. Can that happen?
The overhangs the building itself would have to meet the setbacks and and then apply to the CAMA rules. Are you talking about upper story that
Yep.
is larger in square footage
Yes.
than the lower story?
Yes.
That can be done. Then we would then look at the setbacks from the upper story instead of the lower story. I mean, you can have that. You can look and have it something
Okay.
like that
So you still
engineered
have to
and
deal with the
designed.
setback issue.
That is correct.
So let me ask this. Would it be if I've got 575 feet that's in the regulate, good, I could put a 575 foot footprint here and then expand it here and not have a problem with the,
I was asking those questions.
with
don't
the
know the
impervious.
I don't think that's what.
So
Chad
if you
said.
had a smaller box
Yeah.
as your ground floor level and a bigger box, the bigger box would then have to meet the whole structure would then have to meet the setbacks.
That's
It
what I'm
could not
thinking too.
overhang.
That's what I'm thinking.
Correct.
You can't put a small and a big.
Okay.
Correct. That's
Um,
what I'm thinking.
Okay.
That's what
that,
I
that was
thought.
my question,
And-
basically. I don't
And
know
for the
if we-
betterment of the neighborhood, I would want to, for the value of the neighborhood, I'd want to keep it like other homes.
I can understand that. The reason I brought that up is because I also noticed that it said that that 1,000 square foot was exclusive of stairs and other kinds of things like that, appurtenances attached to the house. So that I was thinking if you got a variance from 1,000 square feet to make it smaller, you had the
Mhm.
stairs, everything else.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't look like it's mushroom house or small
I
apartment sitting on the
understand.
top.
Mushroom.
You know,
Yes,
you
sir.
could have it filled in
Yes,
so that
sir.
it looks like it's straight. That was my thoughts. And that would be the same setback issue, though, I suppose, because the stairs still have to meet the setbacks as well.
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Craig?
question. If the variance was granted,
Mhm.
25-foot setback,
Mhm.
it meets every other requirement. 10% setback in the rear, rear yard setback 25 feet. Minimum side yard setback 10% of the lot width.
That is correct.
Meets everything else. Meets
sir.
CAMA.
It is not gone through CAMA. However,
From the survey, it
from the
appears.
survey, it appears to, yes. The only thing we're worried about is that proposed open deck there on the side. He
Mhm.
would only be allowed 200 square feet of open decking inside that CAMA buffer. So anything outside of that CAMA buffer would not apply to that rule.
Okay, so if we approve, then Mr. Laughlin still has to go to CAMA.
Yes, so for it looks like that back right corner.
Okay. If we granted the variance and Mr. Laughlin decides not to build,
Mhm.
does the variance convey to the possible next owner?
Yeah, the variance stays with the property.
The variance stays with the property.
Yes. Yeah, the variance would then be tied to the parcel.
Okay, and let me make it clear that once somebody stops making questions, that doesn't mean that they can't ask a question again. So with that, let me ask Bruce, have you got any comments or questions?
Let me ponder it.
Okay.
Mr. Hershoff, if I may, real quick, you have a mic. Alan, can we link up Katie? Just to let you know, Katie's going to speak on behalf of what camera rules are. Here, it was just
There it goes.
It's live.
the power button. Time 33. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
On?
So
Okay.
go ahead, Katie.
So I have not reviewed this at all, but just looking at the site plan that is submitted.
You looking at that one?
So the 30-foot line has been marked. The 75-foot buffer has not been marked. When you submit for a CAMA permit, there are two areas of environmental concern, which is your 30-foot, which only allows 200 square feet of open decking. The 75-foot, the whole house can be in. That's very common on the canal lots. So that's something to consider when this is submitted. If it gets submitted, he will have to capture all that impervious because this whole house is going to be in a CAMA buffer.
Yeah, so, and just kind of, again, want to reiterate that we're not approving a CAMA buffer, any kind of variance to those requirements. We're only looking at applying the UDO to this and moving forward.
Mr. Laughlin, are there multi-story dwellings in the general neighborhood where
Yes,
you are? And I know you mentioned 1,500 or 2,000 square feet. If in fact you started with a 575-foot footprint and were to go up 3 stories, which I believe you can do within our 35-foot limitation, you would have a 1,700 square foot house that would comply, at least with our UDO. I'm not speaking for CAMA. Have you considered that possibility?
Yes, sir, but we would need to put it, probably on pylons. And so you would have a 2-story house with to raise the house. So instead of 3, yes, sir.
In other words, may I ask?
Yeah.
Yeah, in other words, the current rules for building a house in that area require that it be raised.
Yes,
It can't sit on the ground.
Yes,
What type flood zone? Is it
Mhm.
AE?
it's an AE. Yeah.
Okay, so the stilt supports would basically then limit you to 1,150 square feet effectively.
Correct.
Thank you for that. We had previously asked if there were changes in the camera rules, and we had asked you to document that for us. I don't believe that was in the packet, and can you advise us what the results of your investigation revealed?
Well, that's Chad. Could you help me answer that? I don't really.
I'm I do not know the answer to that question.
Because we went, to the surveyor
Right.
and then that, and then to see what we had to do. And then, of course, we would go with CAMA.
Yeah, we
Um,
applied the camera rules today to both proposals, and that's what I worked with the applicant to do.
We wanted to take it one step at a time, I guess.
No, I absolutely appreciate that. I mean, there was some discussion at the prior meeting as to whether a change in camera rules had
Oh.
put you at a disadvantage. And
Oh, I understand that.
one of the
Yes,
things that we're
Oh, I
trying
see.
to determine is the extent of the hardship that's involved by applying the requirements of our UDO.
I understand that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So,
I don't know because the property, is 2015 for me, so I don't know.
you mentioned that you have neighbors that have been supportive of your ability to develop the property. And as Bill pointed out, there is a procedure involved that could make the deed restriction not limit your development. Do you have any reason to believe that if you pursued that you would not be successful?
No, sir, I don't think so. If I understand the question right, I'm not sure. Could you explain that a little bit?
Well,
to me?
yeah. So we don't have parties at interest that are adjacent to you that would want to get in the way of you developing the property consistent with the UDO, consistent with whatever CAMA does,
Understand.
that would stop your construction because you were not pursuing 1,000 square foot footprint on the ground floor.
I may. I mean, I think it would be a lot. If it's the 1,000 square foot, I'm really wanting that for the aesthetics of the neighborhood. I mean, it would be fine with me if I could put really a 500 square foot house on it and a boat dock, but I don't want to do that. And so, that would be nice, but it wouldn't be right for the neighborhood, really, if you had a really small house that looked like a garage or something. So I'm trying to pursue it where the property would be permitted to have an adequate structure on it that is in sync with everyone. And then we've had this posted twice on the property, and I've had no negatives, not one. And I haven't heard, that y'all did or not, but I have, had a letter from my neighbor that was submitted to Mr. Sandusky. And so, I haven't had any objections by the neighbors.
So the principal issue here is whether we will allow a reduction in the setback. And my understanding, Chad will correct me if I'm wrong, is that setbacks basically achieve public safety because you don't want houses too close in the event of fire or things like that. You want them far enough back from the road so that public safety vehicles can't reach it. Obviously, where you are, the concept of air circulation and natural light should not really be an issue regardless of where you are. The concern, frankly, that I have is there's a slippery slope. If you were here asking for an 1/8 of an inch variance because you could only get to 49 feet, 7/8 of an inch, it would be very easy for me to determine that this variance would be consistent with the intent of the UDO and in harmony, all that.
Yes.
25 feet is a very substantial amount.
Correct. Yes, sir.
And once again, I will just tell you, one of my concerns is as to public safety. I appreciate the point that you raised regarding the fact that there's a limited amount of traffic there.
Yes.
But I don't know, and Chad, perhaps you do know, in the event of a fire or some sort of emergency, whether 25-foot setback there will properly protect Mr. Laughlin and his property, Mr. and Mrs. Laughlin, sorry, as well as the neighbors in terms of public safety access.
I would have to defer that question over to our fire chief. The roadway is there, so you would be able to get a fire truck apparatus down the street.
Right.
Could there be other situations that the fire code could impose where it may have to be sprinkled because of a setback requirement? I'm sure there is, but I don't know if it applies to this situation, nor has it been applied for to be permitted, so I don't know the answer to that question.
Understood. So thank you for that. Let me start, Greg, with you. Do you have any other questions regarding this?
No.
And Bruce?
You say you had a letter from one of your neighbors.
Yes, sir.
What about the other neighbor?
No, I have not pursued any letters, but I just had a letter of support from
30 seconds, I'm going to grab something out of my office.
had a letter of support from Mr. Harold Golding and his wife.
Is that the house to the,
That's the house close. Well, if you're looking at the waterway to the left,
to the left?
I've never seen the other neighbor. Never. 9 years, almost.
That's a very, very small house
Yes, sir.
built in the 50s,
Yes.
2-bedroom, 1,300 square feet. But it's set back about 100 feet
Okay.
and doesn't look occupied.
Thank you, sir.
Long before the UDO. Obviously, our existing UDO was promulgated, I believe, in 2012, and you purchased the house in 2015, full well recognizing that a variance would probably be necessary because of the setbacks, I assume.
I was told that by, yes, sir. I didn't know, but I was told it had to be because of the 1,000 square feet house. And so that's why, I knew that because one of the town employees told me, that it's 1,000 square feet when I ask minimum, and you have to have 1,000 square foot house. The footprint has to be 1,000 square feet.
And once again, I regret if that was erroneous at the time, but it's clearly consistent with the deed restriction, so it should be of no import to this discussion.
I don't know. I don't know.
Bruce, did you have anything else?
No.
Bill, do you have any other questions?
no, I think he's answered them.
We're just giving Chad a second to check on, public safety is one of my greatest concerns here.
Of course.
Yeah, and
Not only as it relates to your neighbors, but as it relates to you.
Of course.
and that's not what I was looking up. I was just grabbing my UDO in case I needed it.
I got you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions regarding this, let me canvass my board here. Do you think we have enough information here to make a determination whether we want to set this precedent or not? Bill?
I would like to know more about what Cam is going to do or not do, and when the rules changed. Because one of the things I'm thinking about is, does that make this property unusable?
Bill, if it helps, I think Katie might be able to give you some light on that.
Okay.
Oh, no. So this house, it's since it would be a new construction, it will have to follow today's rules. I do believe that 2015 is the same rules that we are following right now. And also something you asked earlier, the drip line of the house cannot be in the 30-foot setback.
I know I see some consternation here, and I think, Mr. Laughlin, you need to understand that we're honor bound to protect the laws of
I understand.
Sunset Beach.
Yes, sir.
We're concerned, obviously, about the
Mhm.
hardship and the complexity
Yes,
of
sir.
this for you. And I assure you, we're trying to find a way to be honest and fair with our town and with you as well. So this is not an open and shut case by any means.
Yes, sir. Another question for me though, before a vote or whatever, I was, when I bought the property, I was told and had to pay the $6,000 sewer for the property.
Okay.
The taxes since I bought the property have doubled because they've gone up in value. I understand, but if it's not usable, how is that fair?
Well, the job of this board is not to rectify
Yes, sir.
legal problems that may or may not have occurred.
Okay.
And I mean, I feel for you. The acceptance of taxes or the acceptance of sewer fees is not a guarantee that whatever you do on the property will comply in all respects with the town's rules.
But I was made to pay them.
So was everybody else that
Yeah.
had a platted lot.
But
So was everybody else.
of course, I agree. But if you made to pay them and then you can't use it, then they say you have to pay it. If it's just a land, why would you have to pay it? It would be,
Because the rules, I believe, say that on transfer, the sewer tap fee has to be paid.
of course it does. And
And
that's
so-
what I mean. But is it fair to pay a sewer tap and not be able to use the property?
I mean, Mr. Chair, if I may, I mean,
Sir.
that would probably be a conflict or issue or something that you would need to address Brunswick County Utilities
Gotcha.
with. Yeah.
And I don't mean to put that on the
Yeah.
board. I'm just
Okay.
wanting to put that.
No, but it's not a factor I'm going to consider because
Yes, sir.
it's an issue that we all deal with.
I understand.
Great.
Mr. Laughlin, do you have a builder? If the variance was granted, are you prepared, ready to go? or-
Not yet. No, sir.
You haven't
No, sir.
investigated anybody to?
No, sir. I was here last time, December 7th. So it's
Right.
been an ongoing.
Right.
No, sir.
Some of those people are pretty apt on the rules also.
Yes.
So sometimes they're good advice.
Yes.
People,
Of
you
course.
know,
Of course.
that,
Yes.
that build on the water and
Yes.
deal with CAMA all the time.
Oh,
So
right.
I
Yes.
thought that may have been a little further help for you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that we have enough information here to come to a conclusion. Chad?
If I may, one more thing, as we look to move forward in closing the public hearing and going through your determinations and stuff like that. I wanted to read something straight from the UDO and just remind everybody, because I know we have a new member and members sitting in the audience. This is a variance hearing where you have to get 4/5 majority. It's not a simple majority. We have 4 members present today, so it'd have to be unanimous. The 4 criteria that you were looking at and reviewing this on is: 1, it is an unnecessary hardship that would result from a strict application of the ordinance. This hardship would result from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, and topography. The hardship did not result of any actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The act of purchasing the property with knowledge that circumstances exist that might justify a variance shall not be considered as a self-created hardship. And the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such as public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Just wanted to make sure that's what we're viewing this on.
That's exactly what we will discuss. Any other issues that should come up in this public hearing? Okay, if not, then a motion to close the public hearing, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor? Okay. So Chad, you're exactly right. There is clearly a hardship here. Strict application of the ordinance would limit Mr. Laughlin and his wife's ability to build the house that they desire to build. Um, I'm concerned that they knew this going in. So I believe that there's a hardship, but it's not necessarily unnecessary. There are peculiar conditions, to this lot. And once again, we're not in a position to change that. I believe that Mr. Laughlin and his wife understood those risks when they purchased the property. Our rules specifically say the act of purchasing the property with knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify granting of a variance shall not be regarded as a self-created hardship. So I think you knew you were taking a chance when you purchased this piece of property. Item 4, requested variance is not consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent. I'm quite concerned that this is a massive change in the setback. And I believe that those setback rules were determined by people a lot smarter than me. And so I will tell you, I'm personally concerned that for us to allow you to move 25 feet back from the setback is not only inappropriate, but also that it creates a precedent that we would be hard pressed to defend against other applicants in the future. So my concern right now is that we do not have the grounds to grant a variance, but I'm very interested in the thoughts of these gentlemen, and I could probably be turned on this. Bill?
Well, I was thinking a little bit along the same lines as you, actually. The houses in on the street, there's several different types, styles, sizes, and it's not a consistent from that perspective. And this particular lot happens to be very narrow, one of the narrow lots. It's not a wide one, and it's even more narrow now given the camera rules and where the water lines, flood lines are, etc. I think what's got me is that you could still build on this with our setback requirements. It's just not the building the applicant would desire. So to me, unfortunately, desires and taxes paid as such don't necessarily stop the rules from applying. So I don't see how I can approve a variance here.
Bruce?
I think I feel similarly. It's a massive setback. I mean, it's a massive change to the setbacks. Usually we approve some of them. But even at 575 square feet, you're really trying to squeeze into an extremely small space. And I don't see how you can build get to the building code in that small space and keep within the character of the neighborhood. Also, I see an uphill battle getting getting relief. It's not just your adjacent neighbors. You have a deed restriction, so you have to get past whoever else is involved in approving that. I struggle to see how this is going to work.
Greg?
I'd like to see you develop the property and
Yes, sir.
it becoming, part of the town and
Right. Yes, sir.
paying taxes and enjoying the property.
Yes. Yes.
But to many of the other things said, I'm reluctant on the possibility of we're granting the variance and then nothing ever happens to the property.
I understand.
And I'm pretty nervous about how close you are to the Camel Line.
Okay.
Because of sea level rise, which
Yes.
we know is happening. And I'm worried about that property becoming then dangerous
I
for
understand.
you.
Yeah.
Even for you.
Yes.
I wish you had seen a builder that
Yes. I understand.
could have really given you and us some more information, how he could really see how this could work.
Yes.
So I can't
Okay.
can't approve.
Chet, could you please confirm to us, in the event that this variance is not granted, that does not forestall the ability of the applicant, should additional information or circumstances occur, to apply for another variance in the future?
I think there's a time constraint on that, but ultimately, once that time constraint is, I'll have to look into that. Once the time constraint is passed, he would be able to come back before you, but it would also not prohibit him from seeking any other permits to build on the site as is.
So, for example, if he had a camera permit and a building proposal in his hands and had achieved some relief from the deed restrictions, theoretically, we could look at that and say, okay, while this isn't a perfect situation, we would like to find a way for him to be able to develop his property. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement. Whether that is achieving that through the regular permit process to make sure everything's met the way the property sits now. The applicant does have other avenues, to look at. This process has an appeals process, and there's the potential text amendment process if the applicant. So there's other avenues. I guess that is pretty good, fair statement.
Okay, thanks. Well, with that, gentlemen, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of approving this variance, please indicate by raising your hand. And all those in favor of denying this variance as submitted, please signify by raising your hand. Mr. Laughlin, once again, I feel for you. I wish that
That's okay.
we were able to do this in a different way. But based on the facts that we have right now, I believe you have a unanimous rejection
I
of the
understand.
variance request.
I appreciate the board meeting with me. Appreciate your time. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, sir.
Is there any other business, Pat?
No business, if I can make just a few comments. We have a board member sitting in the audience today. She will be our 5th full-time member. She will also be our ETJ rep. One of the change in the ordinance was to go from 2 alternates down to 1. Mr. Hovemill has been moved from a alternate seat to a full-time member.
Good.
My apologies for anything and confusion of that over the last couple of years. And then so currently right now the administration staff and the council is working on seeking through applicants. You have received applications for the alternate seat, correct? So we have received some applications for the alternate seat. So we'll have 1 alternate. So we'll have a 6-member full-time board. I'll probably look to maybe schedule a training within the next 3 to 4 months. I get one free one a year from the COG. I think that would be good for us to go through again. And we'll move forward with a new board. And the alternate, the way that will work is that if a meeting is called and I have a vacant seat, that person will just slide right in. They will not replace you. They will stay as an alternate. But in the event of an absence, they will be able to slide in and cover that 5th seat, as we have been missing for quite some time.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Any other new business? If not, then I would entertain a motion to close the meeting.
I so move.
Bruce, thank you. Second. Thank you, Bill. I assume there'll be no discussion, so let's just call the question. All those in favor of calling the meeting? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you all.